So this is
Yeah.
kind of what this chart says, right?
Yeah.
It's really important to enable self-service for developers. And I think this data here says that 99% believe self-service is really important to drive and,
Yeah.
to your point, Matt, enable that digital democratization, right? Make it
Yeah.
easier. But then what was interesting in the survey is that as much as that is important, it's actually still very challenging. So I thought it was an interesting dichotomy. So if you look on the right-hand side of the chart, the response said, despite it being important, there are still major challenges when it comes to implementing this self-service, or as you called it, Matt, this digital democratization out to end users. Looks like 76% said, the ability to integrate new third-party services into self-services, that's hard. 62% said that, supporting new cloud environments for self-service framework, that's difficult. And then I thought was really interesting, Matt, is like over half, 56% said that, today the self-service experience is just hard for users.
Yeah.
It requires a certain degree of expertise for them to understand technologies and clouds. It's just not easy enough. So thought this was a kind of an interesting insights, right? Like
Yeah.
people think it's very important, but there are these, challenges around, it's hard. It's not easy to do still.
Right. And I think, and I know that we'll be talking, as we go through the survey, more in depth on the integration challenges and things like that. But it goes back to what I was saying before. You need to be able to, in order to automate things, you need to have them integrated. And in order to, so there's those challenges there, but you can't have self-service without like a full kind of seamless automation, because otherwise you're relying, the end users have to actually do too much on their own. And so the one thing I wanted to note here specifically is I see two things here. The one is there are technical challenges of making this happen. And those are the integration and automation challenges, which we'll go into a little bit later. But there's also I want to call it a cultural or operational challenge, and that has to do with this ease of use. So I mentioned before, Skyworks, they make analog semiconductors, and their CIO, Satya Jayadev, he was really stressing when they were approaching this digital democratization is how much you have to actually involve end users and business users in this whole process. Because obviously user-centric design and customer-centric business models and things like that have now been around for 20 years or more. So, but what's the key thing, and frankly, it's even part of agile development, is you have to include the business in what you're doing. It can't just be throw things over the wall to IT and then it comes back to the business and you hope for the best.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that more than half of companies are suggesting that it's not easy enough for end users makes me suspect it's because a lot of times this process may itself be too IT driven, and it's not actually enlisting the insights and help of the people who you're actually trying to serve. So if you want to think about it, this digital democratization doesn't just involve an end product where I get it to the people. It has to be, the process itself has to be democratized in the sense of you have to involve the people you're trying to serve in the process for the outset, because that's how you're going to be able to, because again, I think what might be happening here as well is that people who are already working with the technology feel like they know it. And what might be easy to someone who's actually familiar to the technology may still require expertise on the side of someone who's totally unfamiliar with it. But if you don't have that voice, if that's not incorporated in the process, then you're going to run into this problem. And we'll return to this, I do want to say kind of later, because a lot of what we're talking about, and when we're talking about transformation, it's like we've focused on digital transformation, and we tend to think it's driven by technology, which it's enabled by technology. But digital transformation doesn't happen unless everyone is involved and you actually you transform the way you're doing things.
Right.
And so it's a constant reminder of, yes, you need to tackle the technology and you have to make sure you're using the tools that allow you to take advantage of things. But if you're not actually changing behaviors, if you're not actually involving the people who actually work with it, you're gonna hit a wall.
Yeah. So your point there, like that kind of cultural transformation, bringing together the IT teams, the dev teams, the business teams, right?
Yeah.
That becomes ever so more important.
Yeah,
Just
it's the only way to
the
actually truly
run,
transform things. Because if
right,
you're just changing the engine, but the people don't know how to drive the car, it's
right.
not, doesn't help you.
That makes sense.